Hello, everybody. My guest today is Suchit Bachalli. He is the CEO of a company called Unilog, a global technology company which specializes in e-commerce solutions and enriched product data for the B2B marketplace. Under his leadership, the company is now a multi-million-dollar business with 800 global employees and hundreds of customers across diverse industries. Suchit, are you ready to take us to the top?
Absolutely am. And thank you so much for having me, Nathan.
You bet. Okay, tell me about the company. First of all, I'm interested, obviously, what does it do? And then secondly, is it a pure play SaaS model or is it pay as you go or something else?
So the company is 19 years old, and that's what some people don't realize is that we've been around for a long time. We've had some changes over the years, and as you can imagine, Unilog today looks nothing like what Unilog looked 15 years ago. And that's the fun part of being an entrepreneur and making sure you can pivot every economic cycle. So Unilog started out as a content service provider, and by that, what I mean is we were providing product data and content to e-commerce websites. Eventually, we started noticing that the e-commerce websites were running off of pretty archaic e-commerce platforms, and that there was an opportunity to create something that was radically different. And so our product was born, the e-commerce platform was born, which very recently Forrester ranked as a strong performer in their wave assessment. So we went from being a full services company to being a product platform company, and that has been the biggest focus of the last 4 or 5 years.
So are you a pure SaaS company today?
So on the software side, yes. So the software is offered as a pure SaaS model. We have no on-prem. We have no software that gets deployed in any other way other than SaaS.
Okay. And what portion of your total revenue is SaaS versus everything else?
So that transition has been fascinating for me to lead and also to watch. This financial year, which ended March 2018, this was the first year where the revenues were 50-50 split. So 50% of our revenues came from pure play software, and then 50% of our revenues came from services.
Okay, very cool. And let's just focus on the SaaS kind of side of the business for a second, without going down every kind of customer cohort. On average, what do customers pay you per month for your software?
A typical customer, starts out at about, they can go from anywhere from $800 a month in monthly spend on the SaaS platform, all the way up to $12,000 a month in monthly spend for the SaaS platform. Really depends on what size of catalog they have, how much horsepower they need on their e-commerce sites, how many sites they have, etc. But it's a large range, but that's typically where we would sit.
Okay. So, I mean, would you say the average is more like $800 a month or more like 10 grand a month?
I would say the average is probably right down the middle. I would say the average SaaS model, from our modeling perspective, we would say 4,500 to 5,000 would be the average.
Got it. Fair enough. That's good. And you said founded 19 years ago, so 1999. Are you the founder?
I was not. My father started the business as a services company. I joined in 2002 when there were still only about a handful of employees. And then I joined the company, and then we ramped it up all the way to where it is today.
That's great. And where is it today? How many customers are you serving?
We have overall just shy, I would say, of about 400 customers. All of them are a large, mid to large enterprises, and so that's our typical customer.
And those 400, I just want to make sure, since you have different revenue lines, those are all on the SaaS side, correct?
No, on the SaaS side, our customer count would be about 290.
290. Okay, great. That's good. Still healthy. I mean, if you got 290 and your average monthly payment is $4,500, I mean, that puts you at like $1.3 million per month. Is that accurate?
That would be close to accurate. I think, again, because we are averaging around that number, it puts us in the about 10 million ARR-ish bracket.
That's your run rate today.
That's close to our run rate. I want to get, but I would say the range is 8 to 12.
Okay, fair enough. Very, very good. And that's just the SaaS side, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
That does not include any services or anything on those lines.
yeah. So let's say minimum there 8 million run rate today. We could essentially double that and say call it 16 minimum total when you add services on top.
For last year, yes.
Yeah, that's great. And what do you think that ratio will be moving forward this year? Is it going to be like 60-40 or 80-20 or?
The SaaS is the fastest growing piece of the business. We're doing a CAGR of about 40-ish%. And the next 4 years, our CAGR is 32.5. So we've grown significantly, but obviously from a smaller base because the product's been out about 3 years. But now I think we're looking at a much larger base and then growing from there.
Yeah. So if you're doing, call it a 10 million run rate today on the company, if you go back a year in October 2017, what was the run rate back then just on the SaaS side?
So on the SaaS side, I think we would have been in October 17, we would have probably been at about, I'd say 5.7 to 6.2.
So doubling. I mean, that's pretty healthy growth. Is most of that growth coming from converting old contracts to like SaaS, or is it new customers you're adding altogether?
90% would be net new. I mean, our churn is less than 0.5%
per year or per month?
Per year.
And that's annual or logo churn? I'm sorry, revenue or logo churn?
Both. In terms of because our contracts because these are enterprise SaaS deals, and we're literally providing and powering the face of the company through their e-commerce site, and all the revenue flows through there. It's very sticky in terms of the quality of the revenue that we have, and so the churn is minimal, negligible to nothing.
That 0.5%, is that gross revenue churn though, or net? Are you adding back expansion?
We are. I mean, so it would be expansion on our logos as well as on revenue, and then taking off maybe the one account that we might lose.
Okay, so then you would be with 0.5% net revenue churn. That basically said otherwise, it basically means 100% net revenue retention annually.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. That's great. Walk me through the team. What's the team size today?
So I have, we implement entrepreneurial operating systems. So we started that process about 18 months ago. So I have a core leadership team that is about 9 people. That is finance and sales, which I think are the real drivers to our company, and they're pretty much in lockstep. I think that that's very, very critical to have a strong forecasting ability, right? As a company, to be able to tell very accurately what the next 6 or 8 months look like. That's very important. So finance and sales are my 2 critical leaders. I have marketing, which is led by an industry veteran. I have product, and then I have a couple of other functions around professional services and tech support.
So total team size is what?
So my direct report's about 8.
Not direct report, your total team size, the whole team.
Oh, the whole company?
Yeah.
Oh, we're just under, just on the software side, we're about 210 people.
210. And where's everyone based?
About 40-ish, I would say, are North America. The others are India. We have a development team in Minsk in Belarus. And we have a couple of other offshore people in Canada as well as in Australia.
So all spread out. That's great. And then last economics question here. So when you look at grabbing and finding a new customer, what are you willing to spend to acquire a new $4,500 a month customer?
Our cost of acquisition tends to be a little hard to track because it's a true enterprise software sale. So it's not comparable to sort of consumer SaaS products where you could say, hey, I'm spending X amount of dollars in web advertising and marketing. Most of our sales or cost of acquisition is actually direct cost. So it's the cost of our sales team and or cost of our sort of larger marketing budget. You'd be surprised to know that our sales team is actually just 3 people.
Yeah, but just to be clear, I mean, listen, I've interviewed about 3,000 B2B SaaS CEOs. They all know their CAC. It's not consumer model. I mean, when you factor in your sales team and everything, your fully weighted CAC would come out to be about what?
I would say that our fully weighted CAC, in order to run that 4,500 a month deal, would probably come to about the cost of about I'd say about $2,500 to $3,000.
Okay, so you have a 1 month payback period then.
Yeah, so on our payback period, it's usually 40 days ish, 40, 45 days, because we're essentially considering that on a typical sales cycle, which is about 2.5 to 3 months, a sales rep is probably spending on average about 60 hours, right? So I'll take that, and then I'll take some other costs associated with it, and I'd probably come out, depending on the average, and some sales cycles are shorter, I'll probably come out at about that $4,000 to $6,000 CAC.
And is the company bootstrapped, or have you raised?
The only capital we raised was $3 million from Kalari Capital Ventures in 2015, and at that time, we had no SaaS revenue. So their return on equity has been phenomenal.
That's great. Are you looking at raising currently?
We are always open to ideas. We're always talking to a lot of people. Obviously, given where we sit, we get pinged a lot by various groups. We're always open. I think right now we have really strong cash flows. We have strong balance sheets. We're EBITDA positive. And so for us, it makes sense to continue to build value, but we're always open to the right partner.
Yeah. If you did raise capital to reinvest in growth, what chunk would you want to do it, and how much would you want to raise in an ideal world?
I think the next raise would have to be meaningful, right? I think what we've been able to do with just $3 million in outside capital would be, I think the next raise would have to be meaningful. And by meaningful, I mean, in the 20 to 40 million bracket.
Yeah. And if you raise 20 million, obviously don't talk about your actual valuation, but if you did raise 20 million, what valuation would you like to see if you raise that much?
I think, my sense on valuation is that it's eventually the price at which the deal gets done. The value of the company is really dependent on how much demand we can generate during a process. I think that generally we would fall in the market multiple of 4 to 6 times of our revenue.
So if we just look at your SaaS run rate, call it 10 million, make the numbers easy, that'd be 40 to 60 million pre, but you also have an additional kind of 8 million a year or north of that in services. So how would you value that on top of the 60?
I mean, the service revenue is not very valuable from an investor's perspective. It's 1.1 times to 1.2 times is probably what you would expect.
Yeah. So 20 million raise on maybe 60 or 70 pre, something like that would be a kind of a sweet spot for you.
Yes.
Interesting. Good stuff. All right, let's wrap up here, Suchit, with the famous 5. Number 1, what's your favorite business book?
It's actually right now, the last year I've been most influenced by Traction.
Yep. Number 2, is there a CEO you're following or studying right now?
Mark Benioff.
And number 3, what's your favorite online tool for building your business?
I have a few. I think Confluence is right now my top.
Number 4, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
About 6.
That's pretty healthy. And walk me through, how busy are you? How many kids you working with?
I have one daughter. She's 7. But outside of that, I teach entrepreneurship at a high school level.
Oh, wow.
So January through June, I run a pretty intensive curriculum for high school kids in the local Philadelphia area, and we do it through part of the nonprofit that I belong to called TIE.
Oh, that's great.
TIE, the board of TIE, so I do that.
That's great, Suchit. And how old are you?
I'll be 40 in a couple of weeks.
That's great. So last question here. What do you wish your 20-year-old self knew?
That I'm going to be just fine.
Guys, everything will be fine. Coming from Suchit again, company founded back in 1999. Today, doing north of $8 million in SaaS revenue, another $8 million in services each year. Built that growth on just $3 million raised, serving about 290 customers again on the SaaS side. 100% net revenue retention annually, spending about $3,000 to acquire a new $4,500 a month customer. So basically, 1 to 2 month payback period there. A team of 210 people based all over the world. Suchit, thank you for taking us to the top.
Thank you so much. Take care.